And welcome to our June edition of Sports Highlights, our great outdoors edition here at Killam Creek at the park in York County, borderlining Newport News on this wet day, but people have to exercise and they get it done, rain or shine. Our program airs on Mondays at 7, 2, and 7, weekends at 9 a.m. on Cox Cable 47, FiOS 17. Congratulations to all the graduates of 2020 and all the kids from K to 12 for enduring during this school year. Our first guest today is SIKA Henry, and she is a triathlete. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you.
First of all, you've been involved in fitness for a while. You've won the One City Marathon, so really you are full course an athlete.
Yes, yeah.
How did you get involved in being such a top skilled athlete?
I always played sports growing up. My parents had my brother and I in youth sports since we were young. So the first sport I did was swimming, actually, just on my high school team. And then my senior year of high school, I tried out for the track team just to switch things up. And I ended up being a pretty good high jumper. And at the time, I had gotten into Tufts University, and I wanted to be a collegiate athlete. So I reached out to the coach at the time, and I was a walk-on. So I did track and field all 4 years of college. And then after college, I moved back down to New Jersey, and I worked in New York City. And I was working crazy long hours. I was in the financial industry, and I got a little lazy. But then when I relocated out here in, I want to say 2008, I started picking up running, just doing local 5Ks and everything. And yeah, the rest is history. And I just gradually moved up, did half marathon, marathons, and then in 2015, when the One City Marathon, the first year that they had it here, I won it.
The good thing about you is the people at home can relate. You're literally on the couch in the tri-state area, not necessarily motivated, and you really did get motivated. Now you're a triathlete. Mm-hmm. What exactly is a triathlete?
So triathlon is 3 disciplines. First you swim, then you bike, and then you run. There are different distances, so the shortest is considered a sprint triathlon, and then you can go all the way up to a full Ironman, which is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and then you run a marathon, so 26.2 miles.
So you've done all 3?
Yeah.
Well, tell us the challenges of all 3, of each one.
Oh gosh.
And which one you enjoy the most and the least?
Okay, running is my first love. I love running. I can run every single day. The least, I'm not a strong swimmer, surprisingly, because growing up I swam, but I think unless you are like on a club team where you're in the water every day and you get that feel for the water, it's hard. People call it like adult onset swimmer, so it just doesn't come as natural. So I would say the swim.
And swimming's not easy too, because depending on the water temperature, the current, the river and the ocean are totally different. Explain some of the places you've swam at.
Yeah, so there are different venues. I've raced in a lake. I've raced right here in Hampton, the Tidewater Triathlon. So I've raced in the Chesapeake Bay. The last triathlon I did was in Hawaii, in Kona, and that was an open water swim, salt water, really choppy. So yeah, anything that you can think of. I raced in the river. I raced up in Williamsburg. Yep.
Yeah. We're talking to SIKA Henry. She is a triathlete, folks, and she won the One City Marathon in 2015 and 2016. And as you know, running, biking, and swimming, the weather is not going to always be 80 and sunny.
Nope.
Talk about some of the conditions you've participated in.
Yeah, my coach, he's really big on, I'm not much of a gym person, actually. I train outside 90% of the time, unless I'm riding inside, especially like during the winter when it gets dark early, I ride inside. But other than that, even in this type of weather, I go out and train because you never know what the weather is going to be like the day of a race. So you might as well just practice for it. And this really, it's not that bad, you know, like as long as it's safe, there's no lightning, I don't mind getting outside.
We're talking to SIKA Henry. This is our June 2020 edition of Sports Highlights. Of course, episode number 303, Out in the Rain with Ray Price and Elijah Price. Glad you're with us for our June show. And when you talk about some of the places that you participated in, you mentioned Hawaii, but you overcame a major accident that some people never overcome, and you're an inspiration for those. Talk about that and how that happened.
Yeah, so I had a horrible cycling accident in April last year. I was actually doing a half Ironman. I was trying to get my pro card to race professionally in triathlon, so I trained all winter. I flew down to Texas and I swam 1.2 miles. I got on my bike, and I think I only made it about 4 miles on the bike in the race when a competitor didn't look behind themselves when they passed. So you ride on the right, you pass on the left. They cut me off, and I was going over 25 miles per hour. And there was a cone divider in the road keeping us from traffic, and I hit it head on. I don't remember anything. I woke up hours later in the ER. I had broken my nose, my face was completely lacerated, I had over 40 stitches, and my teeth were knocked loose, so I had to get a splint to hold my teeth in place. I had lack of mobility in my neck. I couldn't turn my head right to left. So yeah, even though I live out here, I have my house and everything, I actually had to fly up and stay with my parents in New Jersey for about a month for them to take care of me, and I just had tons of doctor's appointments. And yeah, but then after a couple weeks, I still really loved and missed the sport and being active, so I just got back to it.
That really is amazing. I guess the biggest thing for me is to stay focused during a triathlon, because one thing is to run, then one thing is to bike, then one thing is to get wet and swim. You really have to shift gears. How do you have time to change and do all that stuff, or is all that accounted for?
Yeah, so what you describe is the transition period.
Sure.
So after you get off the water, you have to transition to the bike. So everything is set up. And I don't know how familiar you are with watching Kona on TV, the World Championships every year, but that's a great way to familiarize yourself with what goes on in a triathlon. So yeah, it's something that I do practice. I practice. We call it a brick workout. So you go out and you bike for a certain amount of period, and then you come back and you quickly put on your sneakers and you go out and you run. So it's actually something that you have to practice for.
Talking to SIKA Henry, love that name, SIKA.
Thank
right
you.
Here in our June 2020 edition of Sports Highlights. All right, let's give us some advice now. We'll play Dr. Phil with you for a second. What is your advice for somebody like yourself that for a while you were, like you admitted, a little lazy in the tri-state area, not motivated? What is your advice for somebody to come out and have a workout, first of all walking, and then maybe bike riding, running, and swimming?
Yeah, sure. I think it's easy when you're like comfortable at home, sitting on the couch, getting into work and everything. You might not want to go outside on a day like this, but I find that it's helpful, especially for me with work, to take that break, get outside and get fresh air. Like I mentioned before, I'm not much of a gym person. There's nothing wrong with getting on a treadmill, but I love being outside and taking in the scenery and waving to people and seeing dogs and stuff like that. So it's a great break up of your day, I would say. I can refocus and concentrate better, so yeah.
There's something about the outdoors that you do feel better. You get your endorphins moving. I think it's totally different from working inside, like you said.
Yes.
When you get a sweat and you get motivated and you feel good about yourself when you come home.
Yeah, and I think this is such a great area, especially coming from up north. We have so many. There's the Sandy Bottom and Nolan Trail, and we live in such a great area, and we have access to so many different parks and everything. There's plenty of places, Kiln Creek, so yeah, I'd say take advantage of it.
This is a beautiful park right here, borderlining Newport News and Yorktown as well. And your advice too, as far as you talk about the marathon, that's not easy. Describe how many miles and where did you start from and where did you finish exactly for those that have never been involved in it?
Sure. So a marathon is 26.2 miles, and I would say gradually build into it. You don't have to go from being on the couch to running 26 miles. Like, there's so many different races, a lot of road races out here. You have the options of doing a 5K, a 10K, If you go to the Point Two Running, it's a local running store around here. If you go to their website, they post a lot of the local races, and hopefully once COVID is over and we can get back out here, there's pretty much races every other weekend out here. So yeah, I would say start small and then, sign up for maybe the One City half marathon as prep to do a full marathon eventually.
Talking to SIKA Henry, and another thing too is nutrition and weight balance, and you just can't eat French fries all day and expect to do this. Talk about, I know you probably get away with it, but most of us can't. Talk about what you call a good, solid overall diet. In your opinion?
Gosh, yeah.
A lot of water, of course.
I don't know. People should take my advice. So I like to cook. I like home cooked meals. I try to have balance of protein and carbohydrates. As it gets closer to a race, I do incorporate a little more carbs into my diet, but I find that when you cook at home, you tend to eat healthier versus when you're going out. So, I would say just a good mixture. Like for breakfast, I always have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I would say like eggs is great with, for me, turkey bacon. But if you want more carbs, then you can have toast with it. And for lunch, I usually have salad, and then in the evening, I usually have some kind of like a steak with a sweet potato. So just mixing, getting variety of different food groups.
Right, you feel better about yourself when you eat better and you exercise better too. And really, exercise, there has no age limit on that.
Right.
You recommend kids and elderly to get out there and get fit. I think that helps during this pandemic as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, when you talk about as far as your future, as far as what you're going to focus on, as far as marathons or the whole triathlete, is that something you're still motivated to do a lot, or you rather just focus on the marathons?
No, I call myself a triathlete now.
Sure.
I'll eventually do another marathon. The last standalone marathon I did was the Newport News One City Marathon in 2017. But technically the last marathon I did was at the end of an Ironman. Yeah. So I did do one recently. But no, I focus on triathlon. I have a goal of turning pro, earning my pro card. Which would actually make me the first African-American woman to earn a pro card if I was to get it.
That's impressive.
So yeah, that's the goal. But I still work full-time. I'll always work full-time for Ferguson as long as they have me.
Like you said when we first started talking to you, to get away from that computer, to get up and get active is important.
Yes, yeah. I find that I get some of my best work ideas while I'm out for a run. I put together a lot of presentations, and I find when I take a break from it and I go out and I run, I think, how do I want to present this information? And I'll think about that stuff when I'm out. So I think it goes hand in hand. And
fitness starts at a young age. I think the better habits you develop as a young person, they can stay with you as as an older adult too, as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think growing up playing club sports and being a part of teams and the social aspect of it helped me as an adult.
Yeah, physically, mentally, socially, physical fitness is very important. Greg BICOUVARIS out here with SIKA Henry the final few moments, and you talk about the swimming still. That to me is the tough part because of the water temperature, but the pool is a good place to train as well. Have you trained a lot in the pool?
Oh yeah, I mostly train in the pool. I rarely do open water swims. I train right at Midtown Aquatic Center. So yeah, I train out here locally in the pool, and I have my workouts and stuff like that. So it's not that cold.
yeah, that first jump, it's not like the shower where you can adjust the water.
Right.
But as far as back to this pandemic, because we've been in it pretty much since March, is that no matter what's going on inside, it's still health and safety to go out and exercise. I think that's very important. Just to get that across is to exercise and to stay fit physically, mentally, and socially, to be out there.
Oh yeah, it keeps you sane for sure.
Yeah, you said that yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's like my therapy session being outside. So, yeah.
Definitely. All right, I want to thank our guest today, SIKA Henry. Thank you for being on the June edition of Sports Highlights. All the best to you as a triathlete.
Thank you.
Not easy, but you're definitely an inspiration. You overcome an injury, and you've really persevered and showed a lot of great heart as well.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, SIKA Henry on our June 2020 edition. Boy, can she do it all. Like she said, folks, she was just on the couch a while back in New York, and now she's a triathlete. She's won the One City Marathon, and she's recovered from a major injury, and she does it rain or shine. Stay tuned for our next guest.
The Telecommunications Center is an award-winning television production facility for high school students in the Newport News Public Schools. Students can learn studio, remote production, audio operation, editing, directing, and much more. Students can also earn college credit through dual enrollment. The center has graduates working for MTV, ESPN, CNN, Entertainment Tonight, and Tyler Perry Studios. If you want to jumpstart your career in broadcasting, contact your guidance counselor or call 591-4687.
And welcome back to our June 2020 outdoor edition of Sports Highlights out here at Killen Creek. Hope you enjoyed our first interview with SIKA Henry, who's an excellent triathlete. It's a pleasure now to talk to Naval Academy graduate Mark Tompkins. Mark, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
How did you end up in this area? You've been here for quite some time, and you've been involved with Jamestown cross country.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Palo Alto, California, and I ran for gun high school. And then I went to the Naval Academy Prep School, and then I went to the Naval Academy. I met my wife at the Naval Academy.
What type of discipline did it take to be in the Naval Academy?
I mean, like, there was, you have to be self-motivated, and you have a lot of intrinsic motivation. I was a Boy Scout in high school, and then I was part of the cross-country and track team. You just had, it took a lot of self-motivation and desire to try to get into the academy.
When you talk about being in the cross country, you guys have to run, and gals too, have to run in all types of conditions. Talk about some of the personal conditions you've ran in.
So the coldest I've ever run in was -17. That was up in Connecticut. And so my grandma told me I couldn't run outside.
Wow.
She said, we made a deal and I had to run in the garage, but when I got back to my house in Newport, Rhode Island, I went for a run that night outside. And then the hottest I've ever run in is probably 108 or so.
Right.
Maybe 109. That was in Bahrain. So I just ran up and down the pier in Bahrain for and I keep 3 water bottles. So those are probably the hottest conditions I've run in.
So a little wind and rain ain't gonna hurt nobody, right?
No, I just no. If the big thing is, making sure it's safe, making sure you have if it's hot, you got to have water. Trying to find a shaded place. If it's cold, make sure you have the right gear on. But
yeah, I guess the biggest thing for cross country is footwork too. That you have to have excellent shoes, or at least decent tennis shoes, because you don't know what type of terrain you're running in.
Yeah, if you run on trails a lot, you can get a trail shoe, which is a good thing. But just a shoe that's comfortable and that you've I have certain shoes that are kind of like go-to shoes, and I kind of go through phases with them. But
right.
But just depends on the runner, and that's a little bit on biomechanics.
Very nice. Talking to Mark Tompkins, he's a cross-country enthusiast. As far as what you do at Jamestown, talk about how the cross-country team was in the past.
But Jamestown's had a great history of cross-country. The boys team has won state championships twice. This last year, the girls were region champions and Bay River District champions, and then they placed 10th at the state meet. And the boys were 3rd in the BRD and 2nd at regions, and then I think placed 9th at this. It was 9th or 10th at the state meet. I have to look at my notes. But.
Right. Well, you talk about during this pandemic, give us some advice for people, cross country is a pretty big endeavor, but give us some advice for people that want to walk and run. What would you recommend?
The biggest thing I advise to people that are wanting to, say they don't have access to a gym, or they don't, is putting it on a schedule. Because if it's not on a schedule, if like your willpower is generally strongest in the morning, and it's like if you just plan, like if you just say I'm going to go run or I'm going to go walk, and you don't have a plan of what time you're going to do it, the chance of it happening is much less. So that's I just created a schedule for myself, but my son's a sophomore, and he has a schedule of like when he's going to run, and so the biggest thing is, like I say, getting the foot out the door. And having a plan of like where you're going to run and what time you're going to run.
I guess that's really something very relevant you just said. Your willpower is best in the morning. Explain about that. You're more motivated then?
I mean, I think I've read that in some different sports books before. But
well, how do you motivate your students?
Well, like during class, like in the summertime, we have practice either at 6:30 or 7 a.m. But it's part of it's social, so the kids enjoy. They're a little sleepy when they show up, but then they start talking to each other, and it becomes a social thing, and then we just get right to work, and then
talking to Mark.
In.
Yep, talking to Mark Tompkins about cross country, and of course we mentioned we had a triathlete on first, and she's done biking, riding, and swimming. I guess that's half the battle is your mind, because it's mind and body. There's not going to be a perfect sunny day every day when you work out.
No. So that's we have to plan. Like if it's a day like today, I'm going to get wet. I'm just going to go do the workout. As long as it's always, as long as it's always safe. It's the big thing about, like I said, setting the time up and then having the willpower to go out and do the workout.
But for somebody who's sedentary, what do you recommend as far as exercise?
For someone that's sedentary that hasn't worked out for a long period of time, I mean, I always start with, like the most basic thing I say is start with 1 minute, and then you add a minute each day.
Oh wow!
Because I mean, that's not. Because if you give someone a plan that like, oh, you're going to run 60 miles this week, and they haven't done any running, like they're going to be broken by the end of the. They're likely they're going to be broken by the end of the week. But if you give them, you start with very small goals, of. Like it could be anything from, a beginner's plan is always, could be something like walk a minute, run a minute, or walk a minute, run a minute and then walk 2 minutes. But it has to be something that's achievable for that person. And then as they continue to advance, then you add, more stimulus. And
cross country is about a team.
Load.
Do you recommend exercising by yourself or kind of working out with somebody? Because sometimes you can't always find somebody.
Yeah.
In your family you can, but in most people you can't.
Yeah, I mean, in regular, like in normal times, I mean, recommending running with a group or getting a group of 3 or 4 people to run together, because it just makes the time goes by like real quickly. Like I have a twin brother who's a cross country and track coach in California, and like when we see each other, that's the first thing we generally do. We'll go run together, but having a running partner or a running buddy or a fitness buddy, because then it makes it like it's kind of like an appointment. Like you're letting someone down if you don't show up to do it.
Because during this whole stay-at-home thing, people are looking at ways to get motivated, whether it's cutting their grass or going for a small walk. Anything to get a sweat, it helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It really does you feel better about yourself walking out.
Yeah.
What are your goals as far as cross country yourself personally for the future?
For cross country and for like road races, for me, so I'm 44 this year, and so every 5 years for the USATF cross country championships, they have a club championships, which is a lot of fun. But I'm at the bottom of the age group every 5 years. So this year I'll be 45 when I run it. I think I came in like 40th. Mm-hmm. But the race this year is in San Francisco, so I'll fly back to see my brother and my parents, and then I'll run that race. So I have a goal of trying to, maybe be in the top 20 for the 45 to 50 category.
What about marathons?
I've done half marathons. I've done 8Ks, 10Ks, but I haven't gone into the marathon world yet. So.
What advice would you give somebody who's on the fringe, especially this school year? It's been very difficult, that wants to go to the military. What would you recommend?
Like if they're in high school or if they're in
high school or 21, especially 18-year-olds that are deciding what to do.
Like in terms of fitness or in terms of
just going to the military.
I mean, I've had a very positive view of the military. It gives someone a sense of belonging, a sense of self-discipline. I mean, there are a lot of personal, questions to answer, like what what branch do you want to be in? Do you want to be like in the service part? Do you want to be in the more infantry or armor? Or and I mean, there's all kinds of different questions, but it does give someone a great sense of belonging. And for someone, I've had kids that have come to me as a high school coach, and they say, I want to join the Air Force, and can you give me a fitness plan? And I tell them, I'm not going to give you a fitness plan, but you can do cross country or track. And then like they've really improved fitness-wise, so they could do the basic like PFT, the entrance, the physical test to get into the Army, Navy, Coast Guard.
But you did the Naval Academy, and then you did another 5 years after that, right?
Yeah. So
how was that challenge?
The hardest thing, like when you're young, when you leave home for the first time. Since I had a twin brother, we spent like all of high school together. So I realized that I was pretty homesick from missing my brother. And then I went from the West Coast to the East Coast, and so my plebe year was pretty hard. I was a little bit depressed, but then each year got a little bit more fun and a little bit better. And then when I was active duty, it was a pretty active time in the military from 99 to 04. So I did 3 deployments to the Persian Gulf. And
wow. Thank you for serving our country.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm sure that was not easy. All right, folks, I want to thank our guest today, Mark Tompkins. He is the cross-country coach at Jamestown High School and also a Naval Academy graduate, and spent 5 more years in the Navy serving our country right during the Persian Gulf. And, of course, it takes all types, folks, to get it done. But he got it done in the classroom, in the military, and, of course, out here in the outdoors as well, too. So I want to thank our great guest today, on the road, on location, here at Killen Creek on the border of Yorktown and Newport News. Rain or shine, folks, we get it done here on Sports Highlights, episode 303, if you're keeping track at home. Our June 2020 edition. Thank you to Ray Price, Elijah Price, and our 2 great guests. I'm Greg BICOUVARIS. Have a cool June, and we'll talk to you soon.